And we are live.
Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever. And due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves and corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening.
3, 2, 1.
Now live from the Devil Radio Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning. Welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Here is your host, Mike Crute.
Welcome to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the Monday edition. Dom, back to work, man.
Curdy, happy Monday to you. I swear I just saw you yesterday. Okay, maybe that was Saturday. Hey, Nate, working the board. Good to see you. Happy Monday to our fair audience as well.
I share your opinion that we've spent way too much time together of late. Way too much.
Way too much time.
Really enjoyed the Oktoberfesting in both Glendale and, of course, our beloved La Crosse. Had a hell of a good time.
Yeah.
Great seeing your daughter. She snuck down from Winona State and hung out with her old man. It was a nice thing to see, Dom.
Yeah, thanks. All our friends that came out, great to see you all the new friends we met out late night in La Crosse. Great to see everyone and meet everyone.
Most of them. Dom, you kind of guilted me. I was coming home on Saturday and my elder son said, "Hey, Dad, you want to take me and a buddy to a soccer game?" And I'm thinking, no, not really. But after observing the adoration you heaped upon your daughter, I'm like, well, Dom could do it. But of course, that was during the drinking. That wasn't, the day after the drinking. So it was hot out there at the soccer patch in Verona. Good win for Edgewood College, 2-0. Perhaps the first, last, and only
I see you did your duty, man.
collegiate soccer game I'll ever go to. But I did it.
All right.
And then Sunday I did nothing. I had zero expectations, and I met it. But today, Dom, back to work. And, I'm having a better day, I suspect, than Donald Trump.
Oof. Oh,
Not
poor
on
Donald.
Trial. Were you a little surprised? And, we'll devote a little more of hour 2 to the trial, I suspect, Dom. But were you at all surprised that Donald Trump showed up? The civil trial in New York. Are you surprised he's there?
I was a little surprised, but I guess, seeing how he played it, having his speeches and his rants during the breaks and at lunch or whatever, I guess I'm not too surprised. But it's easy for him to talk all sorts of trash outside the courtroom. He is scheduled to be called as a witness in the civil trial. And if you take the fifth, which he probably legally should do, since there's a parallel, case going on with the Manhattan DA. If you take the fifth on a civil trial, you can have an adverse inference. The judge can assume that, yep, you're guilty because you're taking the fifth. You can't do that in a criminal case. So it's one thing to talk trash on the courthouse steps. It's another thing to talk trash when you're under oath.
Well, Dom, just a little of the coverage. First and foremost, trial day 1 in New York is over for the day. They ended 4:30 Eastern time. That's 3:30 Central. So they finished before we came on the air. So, we can give you a little bit of coverage as the reporting comes in. But the first witness against Donald Trump, the Trump Organization accountant for years. When they lead with the accountant, isn't that going to be a problem for Trump?
You think so, man?
Longtime Trump Organization accountant, Donald Bender. Bender is the first witness in the New York Attorney General's $250 million fraud trial. He was responsible for preparing the allegedly fraudulent statements of financial condition that were used to present what the lawsuit says are inflated accounts of Trump's net worth to obtain favorable loan and insurance policy rates. So Bender was the first witness, and apparently Trump was in the courtroom and very attentive, paying close attention, Dom, conferring with counsel often.
Ooh. Tapping his feet, clutching his fist, popping the Ritalin, I suspect, but you never know.
What else, Dom? What happened in our backyard? Well, there's a new lawsuit going on, isn't there?
There is, Crute. Damn. And this one, you got to love it. Hope Carnop reporting Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. National voting focused liberal law firm is turning to a federal judge in an effort to eliminate a requirement for Wisconsin voters to have a witness sign absentee ballot envelopes in order for the votes to count. The Elias Law Group filed a lawsuit in Western District U.S. District Court in Monday that argues the state law violates the Federal Voting Rights Act, which prohibits requiring voters to prove their qualifications in order to vote. The federal lawsuit follows a similar challenge the group brought to the Wisconsin Supreme Court earlier this year following Justice Janet Prosewitz's election in April, which flipped the court to liberal control, requiring absentee voters to state their qualifications and having the witness attest to those qualifications is a violation of the law, the group argued. A quote from the complaint: "The mere act of complying with the requirement is a substantial burden on plaintiffs' right to vote. The largest share of absentee ballot rejections occur in Wisconsin's largest municipalities, which are also the municipalities that have the largest shares of minority voters, recently naturalized voters, and student voters." Well, of course, Crute. The complaint was made on behalf of 4 Wisconsin voters who find it difficult to get a witness due to circumstances like health risk, living alone, or frequently traveling overseas. The Wisconsin Elections Commission and the city clerks of Brookfield, Madison, and Janesville are named in the lawsuit. A WEC spokesman did not immediately return a request for comment. Group is also challenging a Waukesha County judge's findings that clerks cannot fill in missing information like witness addresses. That lawsuit, which also aims at a ruling that banned voters from using drop boxes to return absentee ballots, is now before the state Supreme Court's new liberal majority. Clerks often cite instances of absentee voters who failed to complete the witness address and the signature fields on the absentee envelope. New ballot envelope design approved by the WEC in August would add a warning icon to the witness certification section to reduce errors. The new designs would be put into use beginning in February 2024 spring primary. Complaint argues cities in Wisconsin have adopted different and inconsistent standards for witness addresses, resulting in ongoing threat that voters will be disenfranchised because of shifting local interpretations of the requirement. 32 years ago, state auditors reviewed nearly 15,000 absentee ballots from 29 municipalities cast during the 2020 elections. More than 1,000 envelopes, or 7% of those sampled, held partial addresses for witnesses. Most of those were missing a zip code, but included other parts of the address. 15 lacked witness addresses entirely. 8 lacked witness signatures, and 3 lacked voter signatures. Envelopes without signatures should not be counted under state law.
So what do you think of this lawsuit? Mark Elias, a well-known, what would you call him, a liberal lawyer. He's out there doing the God's work.
Yes. How dare you, make it easier for people to vote? Well, of course, this is, if you make the requirement, if someone's going to have an error and you have the opportunity to correct it, it's just about disenfranchising people, man. That's what it comes down to. That's all it comes down to. I mean, these Republicans should put their brains together with, Democrats and make it easier for everyone to vote, to engage. We wouldn't have the polarity. We wouldn't have the partisanship that we do if everybody engaged.
Well, Dominic, it's not a question of engagement. Of course, playing devil's advocate for just a minute, it's a question of voter fraud. If you make it this easy, if I can vote on your behalf and no one has to attest or witness that ballot, how do you know the actual person has voted? If you go to the polling place, you got to present your voter ID, right? You got to prove who you are, whether or not I like that Wisconsin law. That is the law of the land. This voter ID, this absentee ballot, absent a attesting witness, Dom, how would you know, according to the logic, that everybody's trying to screw the system and vote 2, 3, 10 times? Fraud and ballot harvesting, Dom. How would you ever convince the righties that this is not just an effort of a liberal attorney to help Democrats steal the next election as well? You know that's how it's going to play on right-wing talk radio.
Man, and it's not my responsibility to try to convince the crazies that the conspiracies that they believe is actually reality. I mean, if you're going to do this, if you're going to commit voter fraud, look at what some of these Republican activists did. Right? They ask for vote. You have to ask for it, right? You got to provide named all those things. There's a process to go through to get the absentee ballot. If you want to do that, you can write in your witness signature if you're so inclined. So let's just stop with all the BS. If someone forgets to put a zip code on, now you're going to throw out their ballot when they did everything else properly. That's a bunch of bunk, man. You should assume that things are righteous.
But those are two separate issues. As pointed out, Dom, there is a lawsuit before the Wisconsin Supreme Court, a newly elected liberal on the court. Well, she could very well decide, along with her colleagues, that that's not good law, right? But that's a differing issue. That's different than whether or not absentee ballots should have witnesses. And the question, and I know Elias is doing this on behalf of the Democrats, but of course the question, I'm not trying to satisfy the MAGA base, but so many people are of the impression that it's stolen and they're trying to harvest the ballots and whatever the case may be. Would it not be better to see the correction of the witness signatures, because a lawsuit before the Wisconsin Supreme Court says, you know what, there is no there. If someone's just simply correcting a zip code or trying to bring the witness information into compliance, or let's just say with the basic witness information, absent even a zip code, you could still count that ballot. I'd be all down for that. But I'm less convinced that it's good politics to seek to totally eliminate the need for a witness on an absentee ballot.
In court. It's not a political issue at this time. This is a court filing, Crudy. So this isn't the Wisconsin Dems as a part of the lawsuit on this thing. And I got to tell you, man, there's nothing that you've said in what you're saying to convince me that if someone's going to go through the process of voter fraud, that they wouldn't just fraudulently fill out the witness part. You know what I mean? What are you kidding me? All of a sudden now they're going to get, cold feet. Come on, man. If that's what they're going to do, they're going to do it. Just look at what the Republican activists have done.
Now, you notice the difference here. This has been filed in the Western U.S. District Court. That is a federal court. That's not the Wisconsin courts. So anyways, I draw a distinction. Come back with us. It's a Monday edition. Kind of feeling chill today. Had a good weekend. Hope you did as well. You can always be a part. 844-967-2789.
Can I get a witness? The meatloaf! We want it now! Hey, Mom! Hey, Mom! The meatloaf! We want it now! The meatloaf!
Grass-fed, locally raised, 100% organic. The Devil's Advocates.
And we are back from the 420 break. Thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. You can always be a part. 844-967-2789.
Dominic, only one regret that I have. Well, a couple.
Yeah,
But only one I want to talk
okay.
about today. Here's my regret. In our quest to provide ongoing great sports coverage right here on Civic Media. And can I point out, we've got your wild card Brewers playing on our flagship, WISS 1100 AM 98.3 FM. Starting tomorrow night, 6:08, first pitch. Also Wednesday, 6:08. And if necessary, to eliminate the Arizona Diamondbacks, we will play a third game at 6:08 on Thursday, and we will play them out right here on the Civic Media Network on WISS, WRCE, that's Richland Center, and 98 The Q up in the Northwood. So if you're going up to the cabin, we've got your wild card games for you. But here's my regret, Dom, my one regret. In my eagerness to provide the greatest Brewers coverage in the Fox Valley, we have provided Brewers coverage to Congressman Glenn Grothman and his district, all the fine listeners there in the lower Fox Valley, Dom. But it kind of bothers me to know that when Glenn and I go to bed listening to the Brewers, we're listening to the very, very same broadcast.
That's not a thing that brings people together, man.
Okay, for now, we will allow it to be a good thing.
All right.
Go Brewers, cheer for them.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Brandon Woodruff out for the series.
Oof.
That's troubling. That's one of our ace pitchers. It's a short series, man. You want your ace. You only get like 2 cracks at him, maybe 3 tops. But anyways, Dom, got a little piece here. Our buddy John Nichols over at the Cap Times. Grothman impeaches the House GOP. Oh, Glenn. I'm going to start this one, Dom. House U.S. Rep. Glenn Grothman is not a great orator, nor is he a masterful legislative strategist.
Yeah.
Oh, John, you could say that again. For the most part, the Republican representative from the town of Greenbush in Sheboygan County just shows up, votes the party line, and hopes he doesn't make another gaffe. That sounds like our Glenn. But every now and then, Grothman stumbles into the light and provides a moment of clarity regarding the workings of the dysfunctional Congress in which he serves, even if he does so unintentionally. Such was the case last week when the representative participated in the House Oversight Committee's first public hearing on the scheming by gang that couldn't shoot straight Republicans to impeach President Joe Biden. That's hard to say, John. Usually when an impeachment inquiry is launched, the House members who are pursuing it make reasonably precise accusations and provide at least some facts to back them up. Pardon me. Even if members of the Congress and the general public may disagree about the process, an effort is made to suggest that charges have been thought through with at least a measure of seriousness, Tom.
Cody, but that didn't happen when the Oversight Committee convened on Thursday in a packed hearing room on Capitol Hill. The hearing was so disorganized and unfocused that even conservative commentators who despise Biden were ridiculing the Republicans for their lack of preparation. And legal analysts were merciless. Jeffrey Robin, the former chief counsel for the minority of the U.S. Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, said the inauspicious opening for the proceedings really does create the impression that this is throwing spaghetti against the wall, hoping some of it will stick. That's where Grothman came in. While some Republicans attempted to suggest that there was a point to their inquiry, Grothman, in his opening statement, simply admitted, quote, We have all kinds of smoke, maybe no fire. Let me repeat that. We have all kinds of smoke, maybe no fire. Glenn Grothman.
So you can cast aspersions, but you can't back them up?
The Wisconsin Republican wasn't trying to undermine the project, but his unwitting acknowledgement of reality showed up in news reports across the U.S. and around the world because it so succinctly summed up the failure of the Biden accusers to make a case for impeachment. Grothman's remarks were packaged in the news reports with those from two of the witnesses that Republicans called to frame the proceedings. The witnesses were supposed to inspire confidence in the impeachment process. Instead, forensics accountant Bruce Dubinsky, a GOP invitee, suggested there was insufficient evidence to determine whether the president did anything to meet the corruption standard that might reasonably be demanded to identify malfeasance. Quote, I'm not here today to even suggest that there was corruption, fraud, or wrongdoing, he testified. More information needs to be gathered before I can make such an assessment. Then, law professor Jonathan Turley, a frequent Republican witness at past impeachment sessions, threw another bucket of water on the GOP effort to link Biden to the tawdry business dealings of his scandal-plagued son, Hunter. Quote, I do not believe that the current evidence would support articles of impeachment, said Turley. Turley, Dubinsky, and Grothman all tried to suggest that Republicans might eventually come up for a rationale for their inquiry, but their inability to do so on Thursday led Maryland Rep. Jamie Raskin, former constitutional law professor, who now serves as the Oversight Committee's ranking member, to observe, quote, we have the sound? Let's hear what Raskin had to say about the smoking gun. Nate, if you would, please.
Just 1 second.
I think
if the Republicans had a smoking gun or even a dripping water pistol, they would be presenting it today, but they've got nothing on Joe Biden.
You got nothing. You got nothing. John Nichols over at the Cap Times, of course, at the Nation magazine. And that's Grothman, accidentally saying the whole thing. Oh, we got lots of smoke, but there's no fire. All the what? What an embarrassment.
You got to infer the evidence, Tom.
Is that how it goes?
If you just look, somewhere, squint a little, infer a little, looking for clear, obvious stuff, you're not going to find it here, Tom. Wes from Middleton texting, thank God for the FM translator. AM Signal has a hard time getting down into Glenn's mom's basement. Hope you're listening, Congressman. I hope you all are. Tell your friends, Devil's Advocates, come on. And don't forget, Ma, the meatloaf. Come back. You can join us on the phones. 844-967-2789. Sort of a chill Monday.
You got nothing.
The Devil's Advocates, the fix for political junkies everywhere.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Dom, bad news for one audience member. Great news for everybody else. I'm sorry, but I banned CJ for 30 days.
What happened?
Just had a conversation with the powers that be around here, and
Another
we kind of put our heads together and said he never adds to the conversation. And, you know, there are those of us that aren't afraid to give CJ the back of our hand. But
rhetorically speaking, of course.
But, you know, that's still not good radio. So, you know, stop trolling, CJ.
Now, is that just the greatest radio show ever? Is that a network-wide ban?
Well, I'm only banning them from our little network.
Okay, all right. From this show.
I would say I recommend that everyone follow suit. I strongly recommend.
Example. Yes.
I am leading by example for the other great hosts here at Civic Media so they can stop wasting their time taking this guy's phone calls. I told him, try us back in November. 844. The rest of you, you're all welcome. Every single one of you, even other CJs, not the bad CJ. Because we do have other CJs.
And other conservatives, right? I mean, this isn't a thing against
it's not a conservative thing.
Whatever issues. This is just a CJ thing.
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, specifically, the bad CJ thing.
The bad CJ thing.
D-Bag of the Year 2022 champion, recipient of a awarded. He's known in infamy.
He is a tool that has outlived his usefulness. He has been blunted, and I'm throwing him in the back of the drawer for a month. 844. Everybody else, you're welcome right now, though.
All right, yeah.
Feeling
absolutely.
pretty chill. You know, I'm feeling even better now that we've.
It's amazing. Oh,
it's like you can't.
The smell of sulfur
Yes.
is gone.
Yes, the air much better. The air quality is great here, man. I told you, I'm feeling really chilled today. 844-967-2789. Ken Bob from Dalyville, our favorite Ken Bob. You're always welcome. What do you got for us?
Hey, Ken Bob.
Oh, I'm going way back to the beginning of the show when we were talking about the signatures on the absentee ballots.
Yes.
And I just, I'm really with Don on that because it's actually a lot easier to forge a witness's signature than it is to forge the voter signature because the voter signature is on file as a registered voter and they are compared. I have worked in an election thing and they compare all the signatures. So if you're faking a signature of a witness, you can take a name out of a phone book and write that stuff down and they've got nothing to compare it to. So I'm just saying that if you're really a crook, the current, having that witness attesting isn't really going to stop anybody.
But Ken Bob, nor do I believe that is the case. In fact, it is a felony to commit a singular case of voter fraud. And the only one that would ever consider doing so are really Republicans. That's most of the track record. Individual cases of voter fraud, almost uniformly Republicans of late. But here's the point, Ken Bob. You know, they don't quite live in the same reality that we'd like to think we do. You know, the reality based by facts and evidence. Just ask Glenn Grothman. You know, smoke's enough for them. So here's my only qualm, Ken Bob. It's not that I don't agree with my buddy Dominic, but playing the devil's advocate, trying to satisfy the entire electorate, not just those of us that, you know, find our basis in fact and rational thinking, Ken Bob. But how do we bring the rest of the electorate along? If Elias is successful in this suit in the federal courts and they somehow strip back this, well, I don't think this makes more confidence or allows us to move beyond 2020 or whenever 2024 hits the books, man. We're not going to be able to move past 2024 if they say, see, that's where they stole the election from Trump this time.
Well, I guess I don't expect the win the MAGA's over. All we need is 51%. And if we're throwing out students and immigrants and older people and everyone who has a little bit more trouble dealing with all that bureaucracy, that's a win for the Republicans.
Well, you understand, Ken Bob, actually Jim Trupus and the Republicans tried to throw out 200,000 absentee ballots, including the absentee ballot of Jim Trupus and his wife.
They were to martyr their own vote, man.
So
Right. I mean, and that's you just nailed their strategy. All they want to do is throw out ballots, and as long as they get to pick sort of which ones they are,
Right.
they're not in it for debate, and we're not bringing them along. They just want to be able to cheat.
well, I'm going to leave it to
Anyway,
the state courts, because the state courts,
Yep.
I'm feeling a little better. Like we might have a fair hearing before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Let's say they win in the Western District, the district court level of the federal courts. Well, eventually, they'll go to the 9th district and probably get a favorable ruling, but then you throw it back to the U.S. Supreme Court. I don't know if I like my
good
chances
point.
before the U.S. Supreme Court, Ken Bob, because this is
very,
an
very
important
good
enough
point.
issue. This one might get taken up.
Yeah, you got a good point there.
So let's leave it to
Yep.
the newly reconfigured and rebalanced to the point of sanity and rational thought, I would hope, Ken Bob. Let's throw it to the state courts. That's just one man's chill opinion on a Monday.
Well,
though.
I mean, yeah, I get it, Curdy, but that's not where it was filed. It was filed in federal court. But what about their
there is a
position?
case before the state Supreme Court, though. You realize a 2-track on
Yes,
this.
gotcha. Requiring absentee voters to state their qualifications and having the witness attest to those qualifications, violation of the Voting Rights Act. I mean, that's the premise. What at first blush, regardless of whether or not you can convince the megas or whoever that this is the law and this is how it should be or not should be, what's your position on Elias's point that these are attesting to qualifications that goes against the Voting Rights Act?
Well, my position would be I don't agree with the Supreme Court's ruling on voter ID. I think that the Wisconsin Constitution is unique, and it says that you cannot put any hurdle between the act of registering to vote and voting. And a voter ID is an additional step. It's a hurdle that should be unconstitutional, to my opinion, under Wisconsin's Constitution. Now, the Supreme Court basically threw it back and said, no, we're going to accept it. Or you don't have standing, if I remember specifically why. I forget why Kennedy never properly took this up, other than the fact his son worked for Deutsche Bank and apparently was Trump's banker. That might have little or no relevance, or maybe a lot. We don't know precisely. But anyways, I don't want to leave it to the U.S. Supreme Court to decide, because I already think it should be unconstitutional under Wisconsin law. So let's let Wisconsin courts decide. That would be my thought.
844-967-2789. Matt from Johnson's Creek, you are next. Welcome, Matt. What do you got for us?
Hey, Matt.
Hey guys, so I'm 100% in agreement with Crute. Like this, my issue with this goes all the way back to the voter ID, and what I hope one of these pleadings will finally get to the point that all of this stuff is basically the inverse of presumption of innocence and the burden of proof. Why is it when it comes to voting that the burden of proof all of a sudden shifts from the state to the citizen, and the presumption of innocence evaporates, and you're basically saying, I need to prove that I'm innocent before I would potentially commit a crime. It doesn't work like that in everyday life, right? Like, and we certainly, I always like to throw it back to the MAGAs, like, fine, you put in those hurdles, if you want to call them hurdles, to voting, then let's have the same issue with maybe registering to get a weapon, right? Like they never want to be.
Oh, slow down, man. Slow down.
Yeah, I know, right? God forbid we have any sort of consistency. And the other thing they'll do is they'll try to throw in buying liquor or buying cigarettes, right? They'll say, well, you need to flash an ID. Well, that's not actually true either. What that is the purveyor, the retailer, protecting themselves from partaking in the crime of selling something to somebody unlawfully, right? These attestations, these voter IDs, all of this is saying, hey, we're going to assume you're breaking the law, and then you can go ahead and try to prove it before a crime is ever committed. I wish somebody would make that argument.
Well, Matt, here's the argument that was made. It was before Posner, and I think it was the federal courts when the first voter ID came out in Indiana. And the federal judge Posner, is my understanding, actually has taken a totally different opinion on this in retrospect. But even then, man, his opinion was effectively people have to prove it. But the difference between Indiana, which is where Posner ruled, was Indiana made it so much easier. They expanded what would constitute a voter ID. They opened up the DMVs. They allowed people to actually acquire what it would be that they would need, this new quote unquote hurdle. And, strangely, Matt, the vast majority of Wisconsinites still think voter ID, pardon me, summer allergies or fall allergies kicking my ass, but still thinks voter ID should be part of it, man. So the vast majority of our friends and family members feel like that's the case. It's been run up and down the legal litigation flagpole enough times, man. I just don't know that we're going to be able to overcome it. But the biggest difference is the Republicans here in Wisconsin made it harder to vote, made it harder to get the ID. And that was their effort. So you talk about the presumption. Well, our presumption, my presumption, because I heard Dale Schultz tell it to me, is they meant to be malfeasant. And when they were in the caucus meeting and they were salivating about how much more difficult it would be for a college student to vote, how they could make it harder for the college kids, guys like now Congressman Glenn Grothman, former Senator Alberta Darling, there were people salivating at the mouth of the idea of sticking it to the college kids through making it harder because, of course, they didn't allow student IDs to vote. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dom, concealed carry permits were acceptable voter ID, were they not?
I think at one point that is my recollection, but my recollection. Crute, just real quick on this very topic, New York Times back in October 15th of 2013, almost 10 years ago, judge in landmark case disavows support for voter ID. Yeah, Posner, one of the most distinguished judges in the land, member of the United States Court of Appeals in the Seventh Circuit, saying he was mistaken. He was mistaken in one of the most contentious issues in American politics and jurisprudence, laws that require people to show identification before they can vote. I plead guilty to having written the majority opinion in the case. He noted that the Indiana law in the Crawford case is a type of law now widely regarded as a means of voter suppression rather than of fraud prevention.
Yeah, but that's not what they claimed. In the federal voter ID lawsuit here in the state of Wisconsin, Dom, if I recall properly, I believe it was our interview with Dale Schultz, and now Attorney General Josh Call was then an attorney at Perkins Coie, I believe, and they used that interview with the former twice elected Republican Senate Majority Leader, basically calling out his caucus in real time on the greatest radio show ever. And that was what, March of 14, approximate time frame that happened, Dom. And Dale remains a friend. And I expressed, that day I was calling into Righty Whitey Talk Radio and trying to teach him a thing or two about, why the maps are rigged, because that's something else that our friend Dale Schultz told us. Effectively, they took him off campus. They didn't show him the totality of what these newly formed, these newly configured maps would do to all Republican voting districts. But they said, hey, good news, Dale. You'll be a couple plus R. You'll be a couple points better off. You'll like these new districts. Just sign right here on your NDA, your non-disclosure agreement.
Right.
At this off-campus facility. And these maps run by Foley and Laudner, which somehow have cast forward for a dozen years. Oh, yeah, the least change of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And, that one ran all the way up the flagpole to the U.S. Supreme Court, if you'll recall. And they sent it back and effectively told Hagedorn, change your vote. The 4-3, the swing vote, Hagedorn came back and reversed his decision because they said, find a different conclusion. And the only other one he could find was to effectively accept the vetoed Republican legislative maps because that was the only option left before the court. My memory, not half bad for a guy who parties his ass off on the weekends.
Not too bad, Crute.
I'm sure I got something wrong, but I doubt it. 844-967-2789. We try to keep you, up with the history of how this evolved, Don, because it's been a decade or more of malfeasant Republican leadership right here in the state. We've been watching and talking about it on the radio each and every day. Come back. We'll do more of that.
Dom, anything you want to come back to?
Highway Star, man. Deep Purple. I just heard it today. Please, thank you.
Save the $2 on tomorrow's paper. Listen to the Devil's Advocates today.
And we are back. Thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Join us on the lines at 844-967-2789.
Dominic, going to the phone lines right now. Jim from Genesis. Jim, welcome. Where are you at, man? I got a abbreviated. Where are you calling from?
Hey, Jim.
Ah, awesome, man. So what do you got for us?
Well, you just covered a bunch of what I was going to say about the districts, wherein basically the Wisconsin State Supreme Court and the United States Supreme Court both said, no, those are unconstitutional, redraw them, except, it's too close to the election, so don't do it now. And the Republicans sat on their thumbs and refused to do it at all. But the other thing I wanted to bring up was, does anybody else find it kind of disingenuous how hard they're pushing for the voter ID, and yet they have no problems at all reaching over and voting for their colleague who is out raising money for his campaign and can't be on the floor to vote right now, but there's nothing wrong with that?
Which colleague? Who are we talking about, Jim?
Well, it's generally the Republicans that get caught on camera reaching over to vote for somebody who's not on the actual floor to vote for some bill that they've got up.
Right.
But
Jim,
the guy who wants to vote.
Remember when Joel Clayfish served in the state legislature? Joel is a good friend of mine. And I mean that in all sincerity. I love Joel. But Joel was on This Week Tonight with John Oliver. And I called him up at his house and I said, Joel, you've just been featured on a national show. And he was basically reaching down and voting for like 3 different people, which happens in the U.S. Congress, happens in the Senate. I'm not saying it's a good thing, Jim. It happens. But anyways,
Right.
Joel got eviscerated by John Oliver, and he said, how bad is it? I said, it's real bad. and Joel, to this day, still does a little radio show on this network, Raised in the Wisco. He is a hell of a radio host. But, yeah, it was strange how often Republicans would have to cast votes in abstention for their buddies who were smoking one in the cloakroom or whatever they were doing.
Whatever it was. But that's perfectly okay in their minds, but everybody's got to prove 100 different ways of who they are before they can go and vote.
Well, I love how they always use the Sudafed thing. Like, you got to have an ID to get Sudafed. And I'm like, yeah, but that's because people make meth out of that, man. You know?
Well, maybe they're comparing voting to meth.
Well, what is it? The opiate of the masses?
That's religion. Thanks for the call, Jim. Appreciate it, man. 844-967-2789. Mark from the Sac, you're next. Welcome. What do you got for us?
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, Dom had to put that one out there. Good. But I think the Republicans, they also want to get a constitutional amendment in there to make voter ID constitutionally required here in the state of Wisconsin. If memory serves, I think I heard that within the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's been reported on this fine program.
And that I think that the whining we'll hear from CJ and some of the other programs is going to just intensify now, because he is constantly whining about he doesn't get enough time to talk, but he's the only caller that actually calls in and calls he's called all you guys liars. I mean, he's called you guys liars. He's called Maggie a liar. That I think he's called Matt Flynn a liar. Todd Alba, he's called a liar. And actually just called him a liar. Well, you're lying. And I mean that, and it just the intellectual dishonesty there is just it might be a welcome relief for us not to hear him. But
yeah, Mark, I think it might be, man. Hey, thanks for calling me. We've got a bunch of people holding. Want to get to them before the top of the hour. We appreciate it. 844.
CJ, Won't be one of them, though.
967-2789.
Banned for pumpkin spice season. No CJ or pumpkin spice on this show, please.
Let's see. I think Alex from Madison. You are next. Welcome, Alex. What do you got for us?
Hey, Alex.
I'm so glad I caught it. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Welcome.
Great. So I'm at Aldi's right now in Madison, and I am a long-time listener, first-time caller. First of all, glad CJ is gone. That guy was just grating on my nerves. Two, I was listening to The View this morning, and there was a senator, House rep from South Carolina, Nancy Mace. She's calling this thing that just went over on the weekend the Schumer shutdown. Get a chance to check out The View yesterday, or rather this morning, you're going to be amazed. The only one that stuck up and debated and talked about how much Nancy Mace was just disgraceful was Whoopi Goldberg. The rest of them were so dumbfounded at how she spoke.
Alex, did you see Kevin McCarthy try to make a similar lie on CBS morning on Sunday morning, and the caster just laughed right in his face? Like, nobody believes this was a Democratic shutdown.
Oh my Lord. I mean, Nancy Mace, I've heard of her, and I hate to say this, she's a very attractive woman from South Carolina, and the stuff that she was spewing was so ridiculous that I think that all the women on The View, they were so dumbfounded, they were speechless. And none of those ladies are speechless. They could not even believe it. And finally, after they woke up, this is what happens with the Conservative Party. They will say something that's so ridiculous that I think they catch people unprepared. And I'm going to tell you, you get a chance, check out The View this morning, and you're going to see that The View, those ladies, all of them are really smart. They were completely dumbfounded. And that lady is, because she's who she is, she'll probably wind up. And they asked her if she would vote for Trump. She said, sure, she would.
Alex, got to cut you short, man. Kind of loud at the Aldi there, man. But please keep listening and contributing. We appreciate when we get fine callers like you. Annie from Watertown, be a good one. Help us wrap up this hour strong.
Hi, Annie.
Well, there's a thing about, there came a point now they won't accept my ballot if my son took it in. They changed it that I had to bring in my absentee ballot. They changed it. And the whole idea of not being able to sue because you don't have standing. Now, my question is, a lot of smart people and everything like that. The question I haven't heard addressed is this, that Supreme Court thing with the person not wanting to do an internet thing for gay marriages and everything, and it turns out they did not have standing by all the requirements. Okay, is that a precedent now that there's no longer the requirement for all these complicated, you have to have standing in order to sue for your rights?
Yeah, they hardly seem like constitutional originalists, Annie, because I always thought that was a big deal. Like, you had to be harmed. There had to be a specific circumstance. And, we've talked to a few smarter legal minds than Dom or I, and, apparently it's valid if the Supreme Court says it's valid, right? And that other term, and I'm no legal scholar, Annie, but stare decisis, the precedent that if you rule this way once, that should be followed consistently. In similar cases, people should find a similar ruling. Well, if you'll recall, that very case in affirmative action came out back-to-back days. And they couldn't even coordinate their thoughts on back-to-back days of the Supreme Court. But the good news is, Annie, they're back in session.
Great.
The new Supreme Court session started today. Happy fall. Come back with us. More of your phone calls. Hour 2, the Happier Happy Hour, is next.
It's 5 o'clock. Good afternoon. It's 5 o'clock. Good afternoon. It's 5 o'clock. Good afternoon.
Find out what's going on in the world, the state, and in your own backyard. This is a Civic Media Network News Update.
It's 5 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Nate Wuggehout, and here's what Wisconsin needs to know. An Eau Claire man accused of homicide has gone missing from a halfway house in Toma. Shane Helmbrecht was accused of murdering his neighbor in 2016. He was last seen on Friday leaving the halfway house where he lived. Police believe he stole his parents' vehicle in Portage. Toma police ask anyone who know Helmbrecht's whereabouts to contact them immediately. 133 people will lose their job when a Milwaukee area factory starts closing in a few weeks. Superior Die-Set Corporation has notified the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development that it plans to shut down its facility in Oak Creek. The company blames fewer orders for the shutdown. Layoffs are expected to start happening in November 20th. Wisconsin is getting $58 million from Washington for its charter schools. Terry Bell reports.
The 5-year federal grant will help the charter school program develop a statewide strategy to make public charter schools bigger, better, and more collaborative. The money will help support up to 42 new expanded and replicated public charter schools. The grant allows up to 40 existing public charter schools to complete activities funded by the state's previous charter school grant. This one is the 7th overall. Interested applicants have until February to apply. During the last school year, about 50,000 Wisconsin students attended 239 charter schools. Terry Bell, Civic Media News.
Fraud prevention experts are getting the word out about avoiding scams. Kathy McDougall with the AARP says if you get a suspicious phone call, don't engage with the person on the other end.
It's better to be rude and hang up than be robbed from them. Don't respond to suspicious emails from people that you did not initiate contact.
McDougall says if you are scammed, it's important to report it to police within 2 days. The Potawatomi Hotel and Casino is committing 517 hotel rooms to House delegates to next year's Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. The Journal Sentinel reports the complex also plans to open the biggest retail sports book in the upper Midwest. The RNC is next July. The world's largest gathering for the dairy industry is underway in Madison. The World Dairy Expo has been in Madison since it began in 1967. This year, Dane County signed an agreement that keeps the expo in Wisconsin at least through 2028 and maybe as long as 2031. Last year's expo attracted about 55,000 people from around the world. And that's what Wisconsin needs to know. I'm Nate Wuggehout, and this is Civic Media News.
Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever. And due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves and corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening.
3, 2, 1.
Now live from the Devil Radio Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning. Welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Here is your host, Mike Crute.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the happier happy hour, rolling into it, Dom. And a surprising headline from NBC News. Conservative Justice Clarence Thomas has recused himself for the first time, ever? Or in this case, involving a January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol by then-President Donald Trump supporters, as the Supreme Court today rejected an appeal brought by former Trump legal advisor John Eastman. Now, we've heard that guy's name quite a bit, Dom. He's been a frequent visitor to the state of Wisconsin, right?
Yes,
when he's still here.
All of the Republicans here in the state of Wisconsin, hell, last year even? Overturned
Robin
the
Voss
election.
Robin Voss was still taking appointments with John Eastman last year, and he was still trying to overturn the 2020 election, Dom. Now, Clarence Thomas, under fire over claims of ethical lapses, had participated last year when the court rejected Trump's bid to prevent White House documents from being handed over to the House committee investigating the January 6th. Then Thomas was the only justice to signal support for Trump's legal arguments.
Now, wasn't some of this information
included
his wife's communications
with Mark Meadows, the Chiefs chief, Dom? Mark, how do we overturn the election? Is effectively what she was texting. This is horrible. What do we do to change the outcome, Mark? A little bit more from the NBC News reporting, Dom. This time, Clarence Thomas stepped aside in a case involving Eastman, who was one of his law clerks. Learn from the best, Dom. The case also involved the now-defunct January 6th committee, centering on the efforts by Eastman, a former law professor. I think he's going to have more trouble getting that sort of work in the future, Dom, especially if he's disbarred.
Perhaps while he's in the pen, he can, educate some other folks.
Well, he's trying to prevent his former employer, Chapman University of Orange, California, from handing over archived emails sent from or to Eastman's account. As is typical for justices, Thomas did not explain why he recused himself. In addition to Thomas's professional history with Eastman, another reason he might have stepped aside is that some of the emails released reportedly mentioned Thomas as being the justice likely to be most receptive to Trump's arguments. Were those the texts from his wife to the chief of staff?
It's just pillow talk, honey.
Dominic, the case was effectively moot even before the Supreme Court's action today, as the committee obtained relevant emails and has concluded its investigation. And Eastman had pushed the discredited argument that then Vice President Mike Pence had the power to refuse to certify the 2020 presidential election results. He has been indicted in connection with his efforts to overturn the 2020 election results in Georgia. And Eastman recently vouched for Thomas after various news reports alleged the justice had fallen short of ethical standards. Well, thank God you got an indicted felon vouching for you. Separately, Dom, he faces disbarment proceedings in California over his role in the election. And wasn't it the crime fraud prevention that mentioned Eastman, or is that Jeffrey Clark? I often, confuse these two insurrectionist plotters.
Cody Thomas earlier faced criticism for failing to recuse himself in Trump's January 6th case because his wife, conservative political activist Ginny Thomas, had been a vocal supporter of Trump's efforts to overturn the election. Anthony Casso, Eastman's lawyer, said in an email Monday he was disappointed that the Supreme Court did not throw out the district court ruling that allowed the emails to be disclosed now that the case is moot. The attorney previously wrote in court filings for the appeal that the lower court decision cast aspersions, not just on Dr. Eastman, but also his former client, the former president of the United States. Very, very, very important people here. So, yeah. Wow, man. He recused himself. No, that wasn't. I don't know if we even got to this last week. There's so much, corruption or what ethical lapses. I don't know how you want to call it. But wasn't Clarence Thomas, doesn't it come out last week that he was like partying with the Koch brothers? Getting some money from those fellas too? Really? Wow, man. The guy gets around.
So how'd Trump do in fraud court today, Don? He showed up. I'm sure it was a good day for Trump, right? Figure he exonerated himself, fully vindicated, right?
Entirely. I'm positive of that. I think we have some sound of the former guy losing his mind.
Now, this is over the lunch hour, right? Apparently, the morning didn't go quite like he had hoped. A lot of consultations with counsel. Our understanding, he wore a oversized moo-moo style suit, as he often does, but in a sort of a curveball move down, blue tie.
Ooh.
Blue tie.
And me not being the fan of the ties and all that, Curdy. What does a blue tie insinuate? Message you versus the red tie.
Well, perhaps he's trying to make friends with the liberal operative judge in the case.
Yeah, I doubt that.
844-967-2789. Got our boy Nate doing double duty over here, but as soon as you're ready, Nate, we're going to play some of the sound of the former president, sort of the lunch hour hot plate. Came out and served up some malarkey for the assembled press. Now, my understanding, CNN broke away from his comments. They felt like it was something of a campaign rally at the courthouse.
Right.
Let's play it for the people, if you'd be so kind, Nate.
Very simply put, it's a witch hunt. It's a disgrace. We have a corrupt attorney general in this state.
I bet he repeats the witch hunt theme, Dom, because
really, that's all they say. This is always everything's a witch hunt. Every prosecutor's corrupt. Every judge is corrupt. Every coffee boy, everybody's ever worked for him are worthless losers. John Kelly's on the record today, his former guy. I mean, everything about Trump is the same thing over and over again. If you believe the man, if you're a Trump sycophant, you must then believe that Trump is the only one who's above reproach. And everybody, from the judges to the prosecutors, hell, to his former employees, the judges that he put in, everybody else except Donald Trump is corrupt and out to get him. I mean, that seems to be a little bit of a stretch. But let's hear more about the witch hunt. Cut 2, plean, Nate.
This is a continuation of the single greatest witch hunt of all time.
I mean, and the crime. Let's hear it. Cut 3, please.
There was no crime. The crime is against me.
Yeah, man. I'm not out of order. You're out of order. AG Tish James, she had something to say today. No one is above the law. Let's hear what the Attorney General had to say. Cut 5.
No matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you think you may have, no one is above the law.
Certainly not that effing guy.
Above the law. Nico. That was who's the keto guy, man? That was one of the
Steven Seagal.
Yeah, Steven Seagal, above the law. New York Attorney General Tish James, persistent and repeated fraud. We know this. Let's hear it again. Cut 7.
Donald Trump and the other defendants have committed persistent and repeated fraud. Last week, we proved that in our motion for summary judgment. Today, we will prove our other claims.
It's not going
Shut
great.
it down. Shut down the Trump org. Shut down Papa Trump, the two ne'er-do-well Trump boys, shut them down, Dom. You know, Trump showed up for court because this one stings. This one hurts a little. This is his ability to do business in New York. I know he moved to Florida and all that stuff, and he's claiming Mar-a-Lago. It's not worth $18 million. It's worth $1.5 billion, Dom. But still, he sort of has a reputation as a New York guy, does he not?
Well, that's why he got out of Dodge, man. He know what was coming, man. You know what I mean? The guy knows what the guy did in his life. So he got out of Dodge quick. A little bit here. Again, then we'll get to your calls at 844-967-2789. Sarah Burris reporting at the Raw Story. The judge in Donald Trump's New York case was forced to tell the former president's lawyers to stop yelling at him Monday, according to a reporter who was in the courtroom.
Loud noises!
Judge Arthur Engeron was all smiles in court despite Trump staring him down with his arms crossed. Oh, and a blue tie. But when Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba, stood to complain about a number of issues, she got so animated that her voice became louder and louder. It began with Habba complaining there wasn't a jury. And Curdy, we talked about it. Why isn't there a jury? The judge informed her she didn't check the proper box or file the proper form to elect to have a jury trial.
Well, that feels like that's kind of on Trump's legal team.
I mean,
not
wait,
on the
what?
judge.
Oh, Your Honor, I can't believe there's no jury here. We did a jury of our peers. We demand just. Oh, wait, I didn't do the paperwork box in a form. Okay. Next, he lambasted the judge for incorrectly declaring the value of Mar-a-Lago at $18 million. He stepped in to correct her that he never said that. Speaking to MSNBC and watching the day unfold, New York Times reporter Suzanne Craig detailed the judge waiting until she was finished before correcting her. Well, how nice. He said, hang on, I never said that. And he didn't say it. His ruling that came down last week said there have been valuations for the property appraisal that put it at that price. It doesn't mean it's worth that. I just found that really struck me because that's what Donald Trump and some of his lieutenants do. They say a lie, repeat it over and over and over. And Eric Trump, the other night, was out tweeting about the valuation, saying the same thing. So the judge, there was a very heated back and forth, a vocal back and forth between the two of them at the end of her remarks. And her audience was an audience of one. It was Donald Trump.
I hope we got more than one in the audience. I know we got at least Dana waiting in the queue. You could be like Dana. You could be next. 844-967-2789. Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Feeling kind of chill on a Monday. Like, beautiful out there. It's like long, extended summer. Bonus summer for a few more days.
And the civil trial of the former president of the United States started today.
Well, I'm okay with that. Gives us something to talk about on the radio.
Smells fresh, baby.
Come back. More Devils.
Charged, never convicted. The Devil's Advocates.
And we're back. Thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. You can always be a part of this fine program. Give us a call at 844-967-2789 or just download the Civic Media app. You can call with a button. You can text with a button. It's super cool, super easy. Take us with you everywhere you go.
And Dom, we are rolling through the happier happy hour. Know what makes it happy today? CJ's been banned for the pumpkin spice month. No October for CJ, not here on the greatest radio show ever. And the audience is already they're already joining in their approval. Dom, what did they say about CJ? Nothing much good, CJ. I gotta tell you. Yay! A CJ free October. About effing time. Thanks, Crudy. Someone noted our earlier caller was at the Aldi. Beep, beep, beep. Just here at Aldi. So anyways, it's all out of Trump's playbook. Lie enough, and CJ will believe you. Well, we won't have to hear about it for a while. Tell your friends. It's free to come back to the greatest radio show ever. A CJ free October. I promise. 844-967-2789. Dana from La Crosse. Our pal band, great seeing you on Friday before the big festing. Dana, how you doing, man?
Indeed, it was great seeing you guys Friday. I was really glad to have you in town. I hope you had a great time at the Oktoberfest as well.
Yeah, man,
it was
good stuff.
It went late into the early Saturday morning portion, Dana. It was a long night, let's just say. And we had to get out of the parking lot. We were at the Radisson. We had to get out of the parking lot by the time the parade started at 10. Well, we go out there at like 9:45 thinking we're safe. Oh no, parking lot's closed. You got to drive over the concrete and go out the back. We had to drive over sidewalks.
The whole town closed off like 4 hours before the parade. I'm like, come on, I'm just trying to do my errands here.
Man, people are partying out past midnight on the parade grounds, just hanging out, drinking beer. I didn't know they did that, Dana. I don't know.
You got to get your spot, man, and you have to hang out there. So you put all your gear there, your blankets or your canvas, whatever you're putting down, your chairs to mark off and tape off your spot, but you got to stay there till midnight, and then you can come back. And people were into it, man.
Yeah.
Dana, I'd never.
Yeah, and we had great. Go ahead.
Well, I can't remember that town partying like it did this Friday night,
Well,
dude. I'm serious. We drove up State Street towards campus just to show young Isabella, a co-ed from Winona State, show her what UW La Crosse was like. There were like drunken people. If they weren't laying in the streets, they were covering the sidewalks. I mean, it was pandemonium up there on campus.
Beautiful night. A lot of people taking advantage, man.
Remind me of a party at the Devil's Advocates house back in college.
I understand that. Yeah, I think, this was nicer weather than I can recall any Oktoberfest in a long time. So I really think that had a lot to do with it. And I think I got to credit the Devils for bringing that nice weather. So thank you, Fleck.
That and the party. It wouldn't have been an Oktoberfest party without us being in La Crosse with you, Dana.
You know it. You know yourselves well, don't you? Say, I wanted to comment a little bit about Trump's showing today. So he's only, from what I understand, he's going to be there. He's only going to be there today and tomorrow.
At the trial, you mean?
Yeah, making his appearance. And from what I understand, these are just these first 2 days are just formalities. There's no meat, anything like that. So he's really risking nothing by being there.
Well, they had his accountant from Mazars USA on the stand. He was basically laying out the case for fraud today.
Oh.
There's some there, okay. I thought. That's why he was so fired up coming out at lunch.
Well, I heard all his comments, and they are is the same thing he's been tweeting on his Truth Central for the last few months. And I think all he did was wanted to show up where he knows, and that Truth Social, that ain't getting no play at all. And so I think he just wanted to be there where he knew there's going to be a lot of cameras, and he can just sit there and spout all his lies where he knows it'll all get picked up.
Well, defend on Trump does deserve to be the center of attention today, Dana. We will give him that.
He's going down. He's going to lose everything. I'm loving it. You guys.
Oh, sorry, Dana. Didn't mean to cut you short. Da 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 da. Dana's loving it. You know, Dom, a little short on time in this segment, but I'd like to get a headline out there. This one's going out for you, Dana. Rejoice, America. These trials should bring Donald Trump to ruin. This is the week that the former president's epic legal misadventures begin. It's hard to imagine his coming out unscathed. Oh,
I think the Republicans like him scathed. They're the pro-scathed party.
Dominic, 7 lawsuits in total. Let me just start a little bit and we'll come back with this. So here's a preview of the coming attraction. Trump, the lawsuits debuts this week. Monday, in fact, in the Manhattan Civil Courtroom of Judge Arthur Engoron, judge of the Supreme Court, First Judicial District in New York. This is the first of 7. Count them, 7 trials Donald Trump is scheduled to face between now and Election Day. Let's take stock of all the litigation to come. Dom, you need a scorecard to keep up. A little bit more. Liberals are wired to see disaster in everything. We're not supposed to discuss matters like this in the tone I'm about to use. But I submit, according to Michael Tomasky, that in this case, a little optimism is warranted because I think it's quite possible that by next November 5th, Trump could not only be a damage candidate because of these cases, but his careers, plural, Dom, both political and business, and indeed his life, could be in tatters.
Oh, Michael Tomasky, tell me more.
Donald Trump, Dom, his life, professional and political, it's in disarray.
Just like the mega Republican Party. They're in disarray.
Do you think today is the first worst day of the rest of his life?
It's all downhill from here for the greasy orange carrot.
That's not me, right?
No,
I'm still Crudey. Okay, just clarifying.
Yeah.
Come back with us. Devil's Advocates Radio Show. You can always be a character here if you join us on the phones. 844-967-2789. Except CJ. Banned for pumpkin spice season. Too much pumpkin spice, CJ. Next year, you'll stay on track. Come back. You could be next. Again, 844-96-PARTY.
I don't know if you know the Devil's Advocates, but the show is kind of a big deal.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the Monday edition, the happy hour, rolling through it. Dom, I'm feeling about as chill as I have felt in quite some time. Like America is finally finding its moral center once again. The former president is facing trial starting today. And Michael Tomasky over at the New Republic writes this headline: "Rejoice, America! These trials should bring Donald Trump to ruin." Let's jump back in the body of the work, Tom. As Tomasky writes, let's start with this week's case. New York Attorney General Letitia James has charged that Trump and his family repeatedly inflated the value of their properties from 2014 to 21. Perhaps most flagrantly, and certainly most fatally and grossly from the perspective of insecure phallic metaphor, he used to brag that his apartment in Trump Tower was 30,000 square feet. That is to say, 3 times its actual size. James seeks $250 million in penalties. And last Tuesday, Judge Engoron issued an excoriating ruling against Trump, agreeing with James that Trump did what she says he did. He stripped the Trump Organization of several of its New York business certificates. He also ordered each of Trump's attorneys to pay $7,500 sanction fee to the court. And while that's not a lot of money, it is almost an unheard of step. Now, Engoron presides over the trial. And since he, not a jury, Dom, will decide things, a bad outcome for the former president seems almost baked into the cake. Unless somehow Trump's legal team comes up with a wholly new and non-crazy defense. There's a reasonable chance that Trump will be ordered to fork over something close to $250 million James seeks. He can afford it, or so he says, and of course he'll appeal, but he'll have to been forced to drink a humiliating cup of truth over a scam he's been pulling for years. There will be weeks of headlines about he might lose Trump Tower. Swing voters will notice, and not sympathetically.
Crute, that's the first case. Case number 2 starts later this month in Atlanta. There was a major development here last week when one of the defendants, Scott Hall, pleaded guilty. He has agreed to testify about some dubious-looking electoral mischief in Coffee County, where the former head of the Elections Division and former county GOP chair are alleged to have given Trump associates voter data. Whether any of that reached Trump himself, I guess we'll find out. In Fulton County, 2 of Trump's 18 co-defendants in the Georgia voter fraud case will go to trial October 23rd. Prosecutors in Georgia estimate this trial will last about 4 months and include 150 witnesses. That will extend into the primary season. These trials will be in front of juries, so maybe Trump's jury will include a mega head nullifier. But the fact that we have Trump on tape telling Brad Raffensperger to go and find him enough votes to change the result would seem to make this one pretty open and shut too. Crute, I'll go on again. Skip ahead to next January 15th. Think about the lovely timing of these spread out over the primary season, with even perhaps more than one proceeding going on at once, when E. Jean Carroll's civil defamation suit is supposed to start. This one, too, looks good for La Grande Orange. Back in early September, a New York federal judge ruled Carroll will not have to prove a second time that Trump defamed her. This case, the judge said, is only about the extent of the damages Trump will have to pay. So in essence, he's already lost that one, just as he seemingly, in essence, already lost this week's civil case. The only outstanding question is how humiliating the finding will be.
Dom, case number 4 is a juicy one. It has received the least attention so far of the septet. That means 7, folks. This is a class action suit accusing Trump and his children of fraud by convincing customers to invest in get-rich-quick schemes while accepting large, secret payments from the companies they were pitching. One plaintiff, a hospice caregiver in California, paid $499 to register for a course and say she spent thousands attending seminars to earn a whopping $38. This is the kind of matter Trump has a history of settling. Remember, he paid $25 million to avoid facing the music over Trump University. But if this one goes to trial, imagine the stories we'll hear. Here's hoping the Platons refuse to settle so that the voting public can hear every detail of what cheap Sleazy people these are. And Dom, number 5, set for March 4 is the Big Kahuna, the January 6th insurrection trial before Judge Tanya Chutkin in Washington, D.C. And we learned last week she ain't recusing. Trump unsuccessfully sought a 2-year delay of this one. Dom, there are reportedly up to 250 potential witnesses in this case, and a prosecutor, Jack Smith, who clearly means business. This is the one where any number of big fish could flip on Trump. What do you think he held that fundraiser for Rudy Giuliani? And again, while one should never be too confident about guessing a trial's outcome, we already have a lot of evidence telling us that Trump was loving the violence of that day and wanted his own vice president to hang. Yes, there's that line from his speech urging people to be peaceful, but there's plenty of evidence that contradicts the idea that he harbored anything but ill intent. And the 6th case, Dom, which is scheduled to start the same month as the insurrection case on March 25th, is the Stormy Daniels hush money case. We've known about this one the longest of all, right, Dom?
Yep.
Now, this matter is generally considered to be the weakest of the group because a payment like the one Trump allegedly made isn't a felony unless there's an underlying felony crime. Now, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has laid out a rationale along those lines having to do with violation of campaign finance laws. It looks pretty straightforward to me, the author, Michael Tomasky, but the New Republic's Matt Form explained Bragg has done some creative legal embroidery to get this case to trial. He'll have to convince a jury, in essence, that Trump paid Daniels off for the specific purpose of influencing the election. What he did so seems obvious common sense to you and me. I mean, why else would he have paid her? But common sense doesn't always win in the courtroom, where statutes reign supreme. Still in a jurisdiction where the defendant isn't exactly beloved, there seems a chance that common sense can actually defeat obstructionist legal language.
Finally, Crudy, the 7th case is the classified documents case set for
the paperwork crimes.
May. That case will be heard in a Trump-friendly jurisdiction before a judge he appointed to the bench. On those 2 points, Trump is lucked out. However, the voluminous evidence against him in the form of photos of boxes of classified documents, along with a tape of Trump admitting that he lacks the power as an ex-president to declassify documents, is rather less fortunate. Trump will be playing the role of semi-professional defendant throughout the primary season and in the run-up to the GOP convention scheduled for July 15th in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Is it that hard to imagine that Republican delegates may end up convening to nominate a candidate who has just been dealt 1 or 2 or 3 convictions? Trump is additionally at risk of having to pay up to 3 staggeringly expensive financial penalties. In the current case, the Carroll suit in the class action suit, I find these scenarios very easy to imagine. In fact, I dare say some of the crime and punishment cocktail along those lines seems more likely to be served than not. If I'm right, Michael Tomasky, here's what will happen. He'll scream, his people will turn violent, and it will all be ugly and painful and difficult to live through. But one thing that probably won't happen, his return to the White House. This is why I've always said that come January 2025, there are not just 2, but 3 places Donald Trump might be living. The White House, Mar-a-Lago, or a dacha on the Black Sea, 30,000 square feet, easily the biggest and most beautiful dacha anyone's ever seen. Or, of course, a federal prison cell in a suit to match his face.
844-967-2789. The Mad Counselor tweeted at us at Devil Radio. Hey, fellas, the color blue conveys trust and honesty. That's the color of Trump's tie today in the fraud trial.
Yeah.
The Mad Counselor says, I don't think it will help. You don't think that will be decisive, the blue tie? I mean, he probably was very thoughtful in wearing a blue tie today.
Well, very, very thoughtful. As he, lambasted the judge as a criminal and should never be there. I mean, good luck. Good luck with that, man.
844-967-2789. I think he's got a little orange privilege, Dom. Don't let the pumpkin spice fool you, Don. Dick from Madison, welcome back. What do you got for us?
Hey, Dick.
Real quickly, I heard CJ earlier in the day. What finally took him out?
Me. Common sense, logic.
I was not consulted on the
being
decision, Dick. This was a Crudy taking charge. We'll see. We'll see.
We didn't collaborate on this one. I just made a call. Dick, sometimes you just have to be decisive.
Yeah, you do. You have to be in charge. Well, thanks for that. But next, some of the stuff from Trump today was just so laughable. At a point, he said something about some of these things are by the statute of limitation. Isn't that the same as when you say all the time, oh, if you plead guilty,
if you plead the fifth, you're guilty. Yeah, I mean, if you follow his logic.
Well, right. So wouldn't it be the same thing, guys, with when he's saying, oh, some of this stuff's from, it's the statute of limitations. In other words, you're saying, I did it, but
Right.
it's past the statute of limitations.
Yes, I committed the crime. I did the fraud, but it was just way too long ago. It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, never mind about that. Right? I mean, the guy, and then this weekend, how sick is this man? That you guys know what I'm talking about with the references to Pelosi.
We do, man. And thanks for bringing that up. I think Nate, well, let's share that with the audience. DK, thanks for the call, man, and the reminder. I don't get shocked by much, but I was pretty disgusted with this guy, and this is a guy who's disgusted me a lot. This one was over the top. Do we have that cut? Trump talking about Nancy Pelosi and, of course, her husband Paul assaulted with a hammer. Right, dude had like brain surgery. Almost killed.
Had his skull crushed.
Trump talking to some, mega sycophants. Here's what he had to say.
And we'll stand up to crazy Nancy Pelosi who ruined San Francisco. How's her husband doing, by the way? Anybody know? And she's against building a wall at our border, even though she has a wall around her house, which obviously didn't do a very good job.
The irony sort of lost on him, right? Not only is he, the biggest jacknut this side of Putin or CJ perhaps, but above and beyond that, Dom, he points out the fallacy of his own logic in building a wall in that people just climb the wall. They go over the wall. Like the intruder into the Pelosi home that nearly killed the dude. Fodder for a joke. Too soon? Too soon?
I mean, if a Democrat had come out and said that after Reagan got shot, hey, how's Ronnie doing? You know what I mean? So much for gun control. Are you freaking kidding me? Hey, how's that Bobby Kennedy, man? Stay out of the kitchen. You know what I mean? This is where he's taken us. And it's not just Donald Trump. I expect that. That's what Donald Trump is. Fine. But the people cheering, all you megas out there supporting this, encouraging this, disgusting. You're disgusting. And I'm a disgusting dude. And I'm calling you out. That is disgusting.
I can attest to Dominic's disgustingness. 844-967-2789. Don't be disgusting. Paul from Monona. Welcome. What do you got for us?
Hey, Paul.
Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you doing?
Good, sir.
Thank you.
I'm a veteran, and so way back during the Cold War when I served, one of my aspirations was to be involved in Intel. And so I made it my job to learn German and more specifically Russian, because East German, West German, same thing.
Yep.
And I just want to say it's pronounced dacha, not dacha.
Dacha. Thank you.
I love you guys.
How do you pronounce Bierhaus properly? Because I was accused of getting the Bavarian Bierhaus incorrect. How do you say that, Paul?
H-A-U-S.
Beer house.
It's just a house, man.
It's the beer house?
Yeah.
I probably could have gotten that one right. I was trying too hard, Paul.
Yeah, beer house in the hizzy.
Yeah, we were in the hizzy.
Have a good day, guys.
You as well, Paul.
Gotcha.
Remember, I saw the Oktoberfest, the German, the woodsman hats with the feathers sticking out.
Yeah, the pheasant feather.
I guess perhaps it was the wrong time to take note of that, but a lot of sort of German nationalism going on associated with the Oktoberfest in
it's Oktoberfest, man. It's beer. Of course it's German. Sprechen Sie Deutsch, Herr Crute? Or the Devil's Advocates come back. One more segment, 844-967-2789.
The Devil's Advocates. Sausage making never looked the
We're listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show, our last segment of this glorious Monday. But make sure you stick around. The Maggie Dawn show coming up next at 6 o'clock. Our last caller is at 844-967-2789.
And Maggie has been warned, CJ, that I banned you for the month of October. So I'm not suggesting that she must also ban you. Maggie's an independent thinker. She'll do whatever the hell she wants. But I just said, don't let him come whining to your show.
Yeah.
Crute won't let me just blab and troll on the radio unchecked anymore. See me after the pumpkin spice season. 844-967-2789. I believe John from Sun Valley, California is next. Welcome, John. What do you got for us?
Hey, John.
Hey, gotcha. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you guys get your opinion about my opinion about the Republican Democrat. When I was on hold, I heard you talk about Trump's tie, and I noticed that this morning in the picture. It's so long. I guess he made it so long and so blue so it wouldn't stick out like Oliver Hardy. Because when a guy's got a belly, the ties get shorter.
Does that happen, John? I'm completely unaware of how that works.
Oh yeah.
Dom doesn't own a tie, so he's never seen it.
Don't look down. Yeah. Anyway, my opinion about these Republican Democrat thing, it's a two-party system that's just a Mutt and Jeff routine on the American citizen. They're both pigs, just one has blood on its lips and the other one has lipstick. What do you think?
I mean, listen, John, I think generally back in the day, man, I'd probably go along with you a little more, but there's been some clarity here over the last, since the Trump age. You know what I'm saying? The calls to violence, for example, right? Making fun of Paul Pelosi, saying Milley, the general, should be executed, right? That's where we're at now. It used to be lock them up. It used to be, and the family values party, right? Fiscal conservatism, John, keeping the government open, working, governing. That's a thing, John. So while, back in the day, I might agree with you, man. No, I think there's a very distinct difference right now. And you throw in the white nationalist Christian weirdos that want, to impose their religion on everybody else. Man, this is a party and a group, a movement out of whack with the mainstream of Americans, man. Nobody I know wants that life, John. So there's a very clear difference right now, John, in my opinion. What do you think about my opinion?
Oh, no, they say one has blood and the other one's lipstick. It's much nicer looking. But I still think that it's just used to keep us citizens divided and conquered. And it's been going on for the last 230 years. I'm tired of it.
Yeah.
And I think everybody's tired of it.
I know, man. That's why we got to get involved, John. Appreciate the call, man. 844-967-2789. It's not going to be the Libertarians. It's not going to be what's the other party right now?
Third way.
That's not it. It's not going to be the Greens. It's just not it, man. They don't have the organization. They don't have the muscle. They don't have the money. They don't have the messaging. They don't even have people in local, politics to be able to draw from. So, unfortunately, it is what it is, man. And it's Dems or Republicans. And as a third party guy, I've voted third party in the past, John. This is where I've ended up, and this is where I think we got to be right now. 844-967-2789. So go ahead, Curdy.
Rico from Rock County. Welcome back, Rico. How you doing, fella?
Hey, Rico.
Hey, how you guys doing?
All right, man.
Hey,
Good.
you know, I really hate to kick a guy when he's down, but in this case, I can't help but take a little poke at the big orange belly. I heard reported this last weekend that along with all his legal woes and troubles, Melania is renegotiating her prenup, along with a little something for Barron, and I find that kind of telling, you know. I thought that was a nice little story this weekend I heard.
And is
Thought
that
I'd
Rico?
just
I
share
did
it
see
with
the headline.
fellow
Is that
listeners.
renegotiating again? Because I thought there was some renegotiating going on when she was holed up in New York and wasn't coming down to the White House. I thought there was something already going on back then.
No, the way I heard this, Don, this is something new. And it has something more to do, I believe, with Barron's trust fund. You know, it made me think, you know, I mean, sometimes those that are closest to us seem to, you know when the house is going to cave in, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that a very good reporting. I heard that this weekend, though. And, you know, maybe it'll come to light in the next couple of days. Well, let's hope so, you know. But
Yeah, when he's trying to hide hundreds of millions of
of
dollars because he gave it to Barron or something. You know what I mean? I wouldn't put anything past this.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
never know.
you got to keep an eye on the man.
But yeah, I just found that very interesting. I thought, wow, she's negotiating her prenup right now in the middle of all his troubles. You know, I mean,
Best time to renegotiate when the other guy's bent over a
That's right.
barrel.
They call that leverage, Rico.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yes, you know, you hate to kick a guy when he's down, but some of them deserve it. You know, right?
You know,
CJ?
I hear
Talk to you
Melania's.
guys later.
I see what you did there, Rico, and I admire it. Kicking CJ while he's down. Do you think Melania's working on a book, The Art of the Deal?
Oh man, I don't know. The whole, it's just wow. The place we're at, folks. What a place to be.
Our pal Dana from La Crosse does question. Apparently, he's speaking up for CJ. Can Clay call if he promises to only talk about football? No, not this show. Sorry.
Can Clay call if Trump gets convicted in November and we
want to
take the call
gloat
and gloat a little bit? Someone suggested that as well.
That if Trump is convicted criminally, feloniously in the month of October of 2023, I'll make an exception, CJ. You can come on. I'll beat the snot out of you and rub it in a little bit. But otherwise, no pumpkin spice, CJ. You've been banned. It hurts a little. It stings. You're going to feel this one for, about 30 days. It's a long month, too. More like 31, right?
Yes. As October.
And
after Halloween, CJ can come back.
And Maggie Dawn gave me a check. So I think she's down for the no CJ action. But that's between you and her. You and
yes,
her
all the other
producer.
fine
You can
shows on the
negotiate.
Civic Media Network, they can all determine for themselves. I like to think we're starting a trend, though.
Well, coming up after Maggie Dawn, it would be the Paul Revere show with Mark Thompson. I can't imagine he'd want CJ. And of course, Rick Smith, coast to coast. I know he's called in on Rick Smith's show. Rick's a big boy, national host. He can handle his own, CJs. But the rest of you, I assure you, you will be CJ free right here on the Devil's Advocate's greatest radio show ever.
Should sell a shampoo to make that happen.
Till it's turkey time. That's it for us. Thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful, chill Monday evening. We'll do it for you tomorrow with Sarah Godlewski in studio.